Lihanna looked at the message screen one more time. The words had not changed. The Veltar triumvirate wanted to see her. Today, right now, she sat in her small office on the trade station above Earth. Outside her window, ships came and went. Like busy insects, human ships mostly. That was the problem, she thought. Too many human ships for some people to like. The message was written in formal galactic script. Very polite words that meant very serious business. The Veltar did not send casual invitations. When they called, you came. Everyone knew this rule. It had been true for 3,000 years. Hannah stood up and smoothed her dark blue uniform. She was 34 years old and had been Earth's trade negotiator for 5 years. She had dealt with angry aliens before, but never the Veltar. They were different. They were the ones who controlled most of the galaxy's trade routes. They decided who could trade where and when. Her communication device buzzed. Park Jinho appeared on the screen. He was her military guard, though he looked more like a friendly teacher than a soldier. "The ship is ready," Junho said. "Are you sure you want to go alone?" "The message said to come alone," Hana replied. "We follow their rules." "I don't like it," Jinho said. His face showed worry. "The Veltar don't invite people for friendly talks." Hannah picked up her small bag. Inside were her official papers and a thermos of green tea. Her grandmother had always said that tea made everything better, even difficult conversations. "I'll be back in a few hours," she told Jinho. "Keep an eye on the trade reports while I'm gone." The trip to the Veltar ship took 30 minutes. Their vessel was huge, like a floating city made of dark metal and crystal. It hung in space near the neutral moon, silent and cold. Hannah's small shuttle looked like a toy next to it. The docking bay was empty except for strange machines that scanned her shuttle. Red lights moved over the hull like curious eyes. After a few minutes, a voice spoke in perfect human language. "Lihanna of Earth, you are expected. Follow the blue lights." The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Hannah stepped inside and immediately felt the difference. The air was thicker here, with a sharp smell like metal and electricity. The gravity was slightly heavier, too. Her feet felt like they had weights attached. Blue lights on the floor showed her the way. The corridors were wide and tall, built for beings much larger than humans. The walls were smooth black stone with veins of silver running through them. No windows, no decorations. Just cold, empty space. Hannah walked for 10 minutes, following the lights. She passed other corridors that disappeared into darkness. Sometimes she heard sounds from far away, clicking noises, low humming, and what might have been voices speaking in languages she did not know. The blue lights stopped at a massive door. It was at least 4 meters tall and made of the same black stone as the walls. Strange symbols were carved into its surface, glowing with pale light. "Enter," said the same voice from before. The door split down the middle and slid open without sound. Beyond was a circular room so large that Hana could not see the far wall clearly. The ceiling disappeared into shadows high above. In the center of the room was a raised platform with 3 tall chairs. Sitting in those chairs were the 3 most powerful beings in the galaxy. The first was Krix, the Supreme Veltar. He looked like a giant insect crossed with a nightmare. His body was covered in dark shell armor. His head was triangular with large black eyes that reflected light like mirrors. 2 blade arms extended from his shoulders, each one longer than Hannah was tall. When he moved, they made soft clicking sounds against his body. The second was Ethos, the Veltar Prime. She was made of living crystal that changed colors as Hannah watched. Her body was roughly human-shaped but translucent, with light flowing through her like water. When she spoke, the sound came from everywhere at once, like music played on glass instruments. The third was Morth, the Veltar Regent. He was the most alien of all. His body was a mass of thick tentacles that moved constantly, never still. At the center was something that might have been a head, but it was hard to tell where one part ended and another began. His skin was pale, gray, and looked wet. All 3 of them stared down at Hana. The platform was raised 3 meters above the floor, making them seem even larger and more frightening. The room was designed to make visitors feel small and helpless. Lihana of Earth, Crick said. His voice was like metal scraping against stone. You stand before the Veltar Triumvirate. Thank you for inviting me, Hannah said. She looked up at them calmly. It's an honor to meet you, the three aliens exchanged glances. Or at least Hannah thought they did. It was hard to tell with beings so different from humans. Honor, Ethos said. Her voice echoed strangely, an interesting word choice. Morth's tentacles writhed faster. Your species has been busy, human. Very busy indeed, Hannah nodded. We're a hard-working people. Too hard-working, Crick said. His blade arms clicked together sharply. You have expanded into 12 new trade sectors in the past year. This is ... disruptive. We saw opportunities and took them, Hannah replied. Isn't that how trade works? The temperature in the room seemed to drop. The lights dimmed slightly. All three Veltar leaned forward, their massive forms casting shadows over Hannah. For 3,000 years, Ethos said, the galaxy has known order, peace, stability. Under our guidance, Morth added. His tentacles reached toward Hannah, stopping just short of touching her. Species know their place, they accept their role. And what role would that be? Hannah asked. KRX stood up from his chair. He was enormous. At least 3 meters tall even without the platform. His blade arms spread wide like wings. Submission, he said. Tribute. Respect for those who maintain order. The room filled with new sounds. A low humming that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The air grew thicker, making it harder to breathe. Hannah could feel something trying to crawl into her mind, pressing. Against her thoughts like cold fingers, she recognized what was happening. The Veltar were using their intimidation techniques. She had read about them in the intelligence reports. Fear-inducing pheromones, subsonic frequencies that triggered panic responses, psychological pressure designed to break the will of anyone. Who stood before them. Hannah took a slow breath and looked up at the 3 alien giants. They were clearly waiting for her to show fear, to beg, to promise anything they wanted if they would just make the terrible pressure stop. Instead, Hannah smiled. It was not a forced smile or a nervous grimace. It was the genuine, warm smile she gave to friends when they said something amusing. The kind of smile her grandmother had taught her to use when facing difficult people. The humming stopped. The pressure in the air vanished, as if someone had turned off a switch. The 3 Veltar stared at her in complete silence. Hannah's smile never wavered. She stood there, a small human woman in a blue uniform, smiling up at 3 of the most feared beings in the galaxy, as if they had just told her a pleasant joke. Is there something else? She asked politely. The silence in the chamber stretched on like a held breath. The 3 Veltar continued to stare at Hannah, who continued to smile back at them with the same calm expression. Finally, Morth's tentacles began moving again, but slower than before. More careful. You are not afraid, he said. It was not a question. Should I be? Hannah asked. She tilted her head slightly, like someone trying to understand a confusing instruction. Crick's blade arms clicked together rapidly. The sound echoed in the vast chamber like metal rain. All species fear us. It is the natural order. I see, Hannah said. And why is that? On Earth, thousands of kilometers away, Kim So-man sat in the monitoring station watching everything through the hidden camera in Hannah's uniform pin. She was Earth's best xenobiologist, and what she was seeing made no sense. Jinho, come look at this, she called to Park Jinho, who was pacing nearby. He hurried over to her console. On the screen, they could see Hannah standing calmly while the 3 aliens seemed to be having some kind of crisis. The Veltar's stress indicators are off the charts, So-man said, pointing to the readings on her screen. Their heart rates, body temperature, electromagnetic output, everything shows extreme agitation. What about Hannah? Jinho asked, completely normal, relaxed even. Her pulse is actually slower than usual. Back in the chamber, Ethos had begun, changing colors rapidly. Her crystal body shifted from blue to red to purple and back again. When she spoke, her voice had a strange harmonic quality, like several people singing different notes at once. We are the Veltar Triumvirate, she said. We command the respect of 400 species across 80 star systems. That's very impressive, Hana said. Her tone was the same one she might use to compliment someone's garden. You must work very hard. Morth's tentacles suddenly lashed out, stopping just centimeters from Hana's face. They writhed there like angry snakes. Close enough that she could smell the sharp chemical scent of his skin, Hana looked at the tentacles with mild interest. Are those for sensing temperature? They seem very sensitive. The tentacle jerked back as if burned. You will show proper respect, Crix roared. His voice was so loud it made the crystal formations in the walls ring like bells. I am, Hana said. I'm listening to everything you're saying. I haven't interrupted or been rude. What would you like me to do differently? The three Veltar looked at each other. For beings who had controlled the galaxy for 3,000 years, they seemed remarkably unsure of themselves. In the monitoring station, Choi Daeho, Earth's trade minister, had joined Somin and Jinho. He watched the screen with growing amazement. In my 20 years of diplomatic service, he said quietly, I have never seen anything like this. What exactly are we looking at? Jinho asked. The breakdown of a power structure, Daeho replied. The Veltar's entire system is based on fear, but our girl isn't giving them what they expect. On the screen, the aliens were clearly becoming more agitated. Crix had begun pacing on the platform, his blade arms cutting through the air. Ithos was shifting colors so rapidly she looked like a rainbow having a seizure. Morth's tentacles were writhing in what could only be described as panic. Perhaps, Ithos said, her voice now containing harsh, discordant notes, you do not understand the situation. I'd be happy to listen if you'd like to explain it, Hana said. Earth's expansion must stop, Crix declared. You will withdraw from all new trade routes. You will pay tribute to the Triumvirate 40% of all profits from human commercial activities. That's quite a lot, Hana observed. May I ask why? Why? Morth's voice rose to a shriek. Because we demand it. Because we have the power to enforce it. Because that is how things work. I see, Hana said. And what happens if we say no? The chamber suddenly filled with new horrors. The walls began to glow with a sickly green light. The air itself seemed to thicken until it was like breathing soup. A sound filled the room, not heard but felt, a vibration that tried to burrow into Hana's bones and shake them apart. Holographic images appeared around her, burning cities, screaming crowds, ships exploding in space. The images were so real. She could feel the heat from the fires and smell the smoke. Through it all, Hana stood perfectly still. She watched the images with the same polite attention she might give to a slideshow presentation. When a particularly dramatic explosion went off right next to her head, she blinked once and turned slightly to get a better view. The special effects are very well done, she said when the display ended. How long did it take to program all of that? In the monitoring station, Somin was frantically checking her instruments. The psychological warfare they just deployed should have reduced a human to a screaming wreck, she told the others. Brain scans show that Hana experienced mild curiosity and brief amusement. Amusement? Jinho asked. She thought the holographic explosions were unrealistic. Apparently, she's seen better effects in human movies. The three Veltar were now openly agitated. Crix's pacing had become frantic. Ithus was cycling through colors that didn't seem to exist in normal space. Morth had pulled all his tentacles close to his body like a frightened octopus. You should be terrified, Morth said. His voice was smaller now, almost pleading. Why? Hana asked. You haven't threatened me. You've asked me to deliver a message to my government and showed me some interesting technology demonstrations. I'll certainly pass along your request. Request? Crix stopped pacing. This is not a request. This is a demand. Oh, Hana said. In that case, I'll need to think about it. She said this with the same tone someone might use when deciding what to have for lunch, casual, unhurried, as if the most powerful beings in the galaxy had just asked her opinion about the weather. Think about it? Ithos's voice cracked like breaking glass. Well, yes, Hana said reasonably. It's a big decision. I'll need to consult with my government, review our trade agreements, consider the economic impact. These things take time. You will decide now, Morth shrieked. I'm sorry, but that's not how decisions work, Hannah said. Her smile returned, warm and patient. Good decisions require careful thought. Surely you understand that, being such experienced leaders. The three Veltar stared at her in something that could only be described as horrified confusion. In 3,000 years of galactic dominance, no one had ever responded to their ultimatums by asking for time to think it over. How long do you need? Crix asked weakly. A few days should be enough, Hannah said. Is that acceptable? For the first time in recorded galactic history, the Veltar triumvirate, rulers of 400 species across 80 star systems, found themselves nodding in agreement to a human schedule. 3 hours after Hannah left the Veltar ship, emergency meetings were happening across human space. Not because of panic, but because of opportunity. In the hidden asteroid belt beyond Mars, Captain Yoon Minho sat in the command center of the Earth vessel Resilience. His ship was officially a deep space research vessel. Unofficially, it was the most advanced intelligence-gathering platform humanity had ever built. Sir, his communications officer called out, we're receiving signals from the Veltar ship. They're having some kind of internal conference. What kind of signals? Minho asked. Encrypted, but our new decoding system is working. They're arguing, loudly. Minho smiled. The new decoding system had been a gift from an unexpected source, the Kethmari, a species that had been under Veltar control for 800 years. They had given Earth the code 6 months ago, along with a simple message. When you are ready to resist, we will help. On Earth's primary trade station, Han Ji-won was reviewing intelligence reports that painted a very different picture of the galaxy than most humans knew. As Earth's senior intelligence officer, she had spent years quietly studying the Veltar-S methods. Look at this pattern, she told her assistant, pointing to a star map. Every species that trades with the Veltar pays tribute, every single one. How much? Her assistant asked. It varies, but the average is about 35% of total trade profits. Some pay as much as 60%. And they all just accepted this? They were intimidated into it. The Veltar would arrive, demonstrate their power, and make demands. No species ever said no until today. Meanwhile, in a small conference room on the trade station, Bae Hyun-woo was having a very interesting conversation. Across from him sat 3 beings who, until a few hours ago, had been too frightened to speak openly about their real feelings toward the Veltar. The first was Zelt, a representative of the Miran collective. His people looked like tall, thin humans with blue skin and large eyes. The second was Korith from the Roxinger clans. She was made of living stone, but could move as easily as flesh. The third was Vash, whose species didn't have individual names, but shared a group consciousness. Your diplomat? Zelt said carefully. She really smiled at them? She did, Young-woo confirmed. She treated them like they were being unreasonable children. Korith's stone face somehow managed to show amazement. In 400 years, my people have never seen anyone resist the Veltar fear projection. How many species pay tribute to them? Young-woo asked. 47 confirmed, Vash replied. Possibly more. We have been comparing notes. This was the secret Hyunwoo had discovered over months of careful diplomacy. The species under Veltar control had been talking to each other, quietly, carefully. They had been sharing information and looking for any sign that resistance might be possible. What happened after she smiled? Zelt asked. They didn't know what to do. According to our observer, they actually seemed frightened. The 3 aliens exchanged glances. For beings from different star systems, they showed remarkably similar expressions of hope mixed with disbelief. Back on the Veltar ship, the triumvirate was indeed having an emergency meeting. But it wasn't the confident discussion of powerful rulers. It was something much closer to panic. The humans showed no fear response whatsoever, Morth was saying. His tentacles writhed anxiously. Our standard intimidation protocols were completely ineffective. Perhaps she was using some kind of technological protection, Ethos suggested. Her crystal body was a nervous shade of yellow. "No," Crick said firmly. "I scanned her thoroughly. No devices. No chemical suppressants. No genetic modifications. She is completely baseline human." "Then how?" Morth demanded. "I don't know," Crix admitted. For a being who had dominated the galaxy for 3,000 years, these were not easy words to say. The truth was, the Veltar had never encountered natural fearlessness before. Every species they had ever met could be intimidated. It was so universal that they had assumed it was a basic law of intelligent life. Fear was how they maintained control. Fear was their power. Without fear, they were just three large aliens in an empty room. "We need more information about humans," Ethos said. "How they think, what motivates them, what they want." "I've been monitoring their communications," Morth said. "They seem to find our behavior amusing." "Amusing?" Crix's blade arms clicked together sharply. "There are reports spreading through their networks about the meeting. They are sharing it as entertainment. Some are calling it the day the bullies met their match. On Earth, public reaction to the news was indeed spreading rapidly. But it wasn't fear or concern. It was something the Veltar had never seen before. Laughter. Social media was filled with jokes about the aliens who forgot how to have a conversation and the most awkward first date in galactic history. Someone had already created a video compilation of Hana's calmest moments set to relaxing music, the official government. Response was more measured but equally confident. Trade Minister Deho held a press conference that was broadcast across human space. "Earth has received certain requests from the Veltar Triumvirate regarding our trade activities," he announced. "We are reviewing these requests through normal diplomatic channels. We remain committed to free and fair trade with all species." What he didn't say was that normal diplomatic channels now included 47 other species, who were suddenly very interested in forming closer ties with humanity. Captain Minho's ship continued monitoring Veltar communications. What they heard was increasingly desperate planning sessions. The Triumvirate was trying to figure out how to deal with a species that simply refused to be intimidated. "They're considering escalation," Minho reported to Earth Command. "Military threats, trade blockades, economic pressure." "Any movement of their fleets?" Command asked. "None. And here's the interesting part. Our allies are reporting that Veltar vessels in their systems are acting nervous, checking and double-checking security protocols. Some have actually withdrawn to safer positions." On the trade station, Jiwan was analyzing the psychological profiles Earth had developed on the Veltar leadership. What she found was fascinating and disturbing. "They're not actually that powerful," she told her team. "I mean, they have big ships and advanced technology, but their real strength has always been psychological. They've never had to fight a real war because everyone surrendered before it started." "What happens when someone doesn't surrender?" her assistant asked. "We're about to find out." In her small quarters on the station, Hana was having a video call with her grandmother in Seoul. The old woman listened patiently as Hana described her day. "So these aliens think they can scare people into giving them money?" her grandmother asked. "That's about right, grandmother. And you smiled at them?" "I did," her grandmother nodded approvingly. "Good. Bullies are the same everywhere, dear, on Earth or in space. The moment you show them you're not afraid, they don't know what to do. I learned that from you," Hana said. "Yes, you did. Now, what will you do tomorrow?" "I think I'll have tea with some new friends," Hana said, "and maybe change the galaxy a little bit." Her grandmother smiled, the same warm, unshakable smile that had faced down climate disasters, corporate raiders, and now alien overlords. "That sounds like a good plan, dear." The next morning, Hana woke up to find the galaxy had changed overnight. Her communication device was full of messages from species she had never heard of. All of them wanted to talk. The first message was from the Kethmari Collective. "We have waited 800 years for this day. May we discuss trade partnerships?" The second was from the Oran Republic. "Our tribute payments to the Veltar have bankrupted 3 colonies. We seek alternatives." By the time she finished reading, there were 47 similar messages. Jinho knocked on her door with breakfast and a worried expression. The Veltar have been sending signals all night, he told her. They want another meeting. Of course they do, Hana said, pouring herself tea. They're probably very confused right now. Shouldn't we be concerned? They control most of the galaxy's trade routes. Hana thought about this while she ate. It was true that the Veltar had enormous power, but power built on fear was different from power built on strength. Her grandmother had taught her this during the climate wars, when corporate armies had tried to force people from their homes. Fear only works if people believe in it, she said finally. Once they stop believing, the fear disappears. On the Veltar ship, the Triumvirate was discovering this truth in the most painful way possible. Their morning briefing was a catalog of disasters. 17 species have requested emergency renegotiation of their tribute agreements, Morth reported, whose tentacles were pale gray with stress. The Kethmari have stopped payments entirely. What reason did they give? Crix demanded. They said they were reviewing their options in light of recent diplomatic developments. Ethos flickered through angry reds and oranges. They mean the human. One small human has caused this. We need to understand how, Crix said, schedule another meeting. We will learn what makes her immune to our methods. But Hana was already busy with her own meetings. In the station's main conference room, she sat across from representatives of 6 different species. These were not official diplomats. Those were too frightened to be seen talking to humans. These were trade representatives, business leaders, and civil rights activists who had been secretly organizing for years. The tribute system has destroyed our economy, explained Veltar, a delegate from the Moran Collective. His blue skin had dark patches that Hana learned indicated stress. Half our population works only to pay the Veltar. We produce nothing for ourselves. How long has this been going on? Hana asked. For my people, 600 years. Others have suffered longer. Around the table, the other representatives nodded. Each had similar stories. Entire civilizations, working only to satisfy Veltar demands. Generations born into economic slavery they couldn't escape. What would happen if you stopped paying? Hana asked. The room went silent. It was Kareth, the stone being, who answered. No one has ever tried. The Veltar demonstrate their power when species resist. Usually once is enough. What kind of demonstration? Fear. Terror, psychological breakdown. They make you understand that resistance is hopeless. But what if someone isn't afraid? Another silence. These beings had lived their entire lives assuming that fear of the Veltar was a natural law, like gravity or entropy. We don't know, Zelt admitted. It's never happened before. Meanwhile, Earth's intelligence services were working around the clock to answer that same question. In her secure office, Jiwan was reviewing everything humanity knew about Veltar. Military capabilities. Their fleet is impressive, she told Minister Deho over secure video link. Advanced technology, powerful weapons, excellent defensive systems. But Deho could hear something in her voice. But they've never actually used it in anger. Every military action for the past 1,000 years has been against species that surrendered immediately. They have no experience with actual warfare. What about their psychological weapons? Extremely effective against most species. But they're specifically designed to trigger fear responses. Humans seem to be naturally resistant. Why? Jiwan pulled up a comparative study she had been working on. Most intelligent species evolved as prey animals. They survived by avoiding predators, hiding from danger, forming protective groups. Fear kept them alive. And humans? We evolved as persistence hunters. We survived by chasing down prey that was bigger, faster, and stronger than us, by never giving up, by refusing to be intimidated. On the screen, Deho smiled grimly. So we're naturally designed to be stubborn, in the most useful possible way. The Veltar had come to a similar conclusion, but it filled them with terror rather than satisfaction. In their emergency strategy session, They were trying to understand an enemy they had never imagined could exist. Humans don't seem to have a normal fear response, Ethos was saying. Our methods that work on every other species are useless. Then we escalate, Crix declared. Economic pressure. Trade blockades, military intimidation. With what? Morth asked quietly. What do you mean? I've been reviewing our military assets. Our ships are designed for patrol and intimidation, not combat. Our crews have no battle experience. Our weapons are meant to frighten, not destroy. The uncomfortable truth was settling over them like a cold fog. The Veltar Triumvirate, rulers of the galaxy, had built their entire empire on bluff. They were like a magician whose tricks only worked as long as no one looked too closely. We need to find another approach, Ethos said. What approach? Crix demanded. For 3,000 years we have maintained order through strength. No, Morth said slowly. We've maintained order through the appearance of strength. There's a difference. Back on Earth Station, Hannah was having lunch with her new friends. From across the galaxy, the conversation was eye-opening. The Veltar control trade routes, but they don't produce anything themselves, explained Vash from the group consciousness species. They take tribute from everyone else's work. What? Do they give in return? Hannah asked. Protection, said Korith. They protect us from pirates, raiders, and other threats. What threats? Another uncomfortable silence. Finally, Zelt spoke up. That's actually a good question. Most of the threats they protect us from are other species they also control. The raiders they stop are usually working for them in the first place. Hannah set down her teacup carefully. So they create problems and then charge you for solving them? We never thought of it that way, Korith admitted. But yes. What would happen if you all just stopped? Stopped what? Stopped paying, stopped being afraid, stopped pretending they're in charge. The alien representatives looked at each other. It was such a simple idea that it had never occurred to them. What would happen if they just said no? They would retaliate, Veltar said, but his voice was uncertain. How? With what? If they're dependent on your tribute payments, they need you more than you need them. That afternoon, Hannah received another message from the Veltar. They wanted to meet again. This time, they offered to come to the human station instead of requiring her to visit their ship. That's interesting, she told Jinho. They're making concessions already. Is that good or bad? Hannah smiled. The same calm, unshakable smile that was becoming famous across the galaxy. It means they're learning to have conversations instead of giving orders. That's always good. As the day ended, reports were coming in from across the galaxy. 3 more species had stopped tribute payments. 5 others had demanded renegotiation of their agreements. The Veltar fleet, instead of responding with force, was frantically sending diplomatic messages trying to arrange meetings. The age of fear was ending. The age of negotiation was about to begin, and it had all started with one human woman who forgot to be intimidated. The meeting was scheduled for the next day in Conference Room 7 on Earth's trade station. It was a smaller, more comfortable space than the vast intimidation chamber on the Veltar ship. Round table, normal lighting, and chairs sized for human comfort. When the 3 Veltar entered, they looked remarkably different than they had just 2 days before. Crix's blade arms hung at his sides instead of being held in aggressive positions. Ethos had settled into a neutral blue color, instead of her previous dramatic shifts. Morth's tentacles moved slowly, almost hesitantly. Hannah was already seated at the table with a fresh pot of tea and extra cups. She stood up as they entered. Thank you for coming, she said warmly. Please, sit wherever you're comfortable. The 3 aliens looked around the room uncertainly. This was clearly not what they had expected. The chairs may not fit your body types perfectly, Hannah continued. I can have maintenance bring different furniture if you prefer. This is adequate, Crix said carefully. He lowered himself onto a reinforced chair that creaked but held his weight. Ethos remained standing, her crystal form reflecting the room's soft lights. Morth settled into what looked like a large cushion, his tentacles arranged around him like a living carpet. Would anyone like tea? Hannah asked. I have several varieties. You want to serve us ... refreshments? Ethos asked. Her voice contained notes of confusion. Well, yes. It's polite, and conversations always go better when people are comfortable. The three Veltar exchanged glances. In 3,000 years of conducting negotiations, no one had ever offered them tea. We do not require sustenance, Morth said stiffly. Of course not, but you might enjoy it anyway. Hannah poured herself a cup and sat back down. Now, you mentioned you wanted to continue our discussion from yesterday. Crix cleared his throat, a sound like metal grinding. The triumvirate has reconsidered our previous ... proposal. Oh, good. What did you decide? We are prepared to reduce the tribute requirement to 30%, Hannah nodded thoughtfully. That's very generous. May I ask what tribute is for exactly? Another exchange of glances. For protection, Ethos said. Protection from what? From ... Various threats. Pirates, raiders, economic instability. I see. And how many pirates have attacked human shipping in the past year? That is not ... The point is that we maintain order. By threatening people into paying you money? The room went very quiet. Hannah had said it so matter-of-factly, without accusation or anger, that it sounded like she was describing the weather. The galaxy is a dangerous place, Crix said defensively. I'm sure it is. But from what I understand, most of the danger comes from groups that work for you. Morth's tentacles began writhing faster. That is ... We do not. The situation is more complex ... I'm sure it is, Hannah agreed. Most situations are. But let's try to keep things simple. You want human businesses to give you 30% of their profits. In exchange, you'll protect us from threats that mostly don't exist or that you created. Yourselves, is that accurate? The three aliens looked deeply uncomfortable. When stated so plainly, their entire system sounded rather unreasonable. The galactic economy has functioned this way for millennia, Ethos said weakly. Has it functioned well? What do you mean? Are people happy? Are they prosperous? Are they free to trade and travel and build the lives they want? Another long silence. The answer was clearly no, but none of the Veltar seemed willing to say it. The system maintains stability, Crix said finally. For whom? Hannah let that question hang in the air while she sipped her tea. Outside the window, ships from a dozen different species were docked at the station. Most of them were cargo vessels, their crews working hard to make enough profit to satisfy both their own needs and Veltar tribute demands. We have a different proposal, she said finally. You are not in a position to make proposals, Morth snapped, then immediately looked surprised at his own words. The aggressive response was automatic, but it sounded hollow in the small, comfortable room. Everyone is in a position to make proposals, Hannah said gently. That's how conversations work. What is your proposal? Ethos asked. Complete elimination of the tribute system. Open trade routes for all species. The Veltar are welcome to compete in the free market like everyone else. The three aliens stared at her as if she had suggested they all jump into a star. That is impossible, Crix said. Why? Because ... because it would destroy everything we have built. Would it? Or would it just change things? The same thing. Hannah set down her teacup and leaned forward slightly. Let me tell you a story about my grandmother. When I was young, there was a terrible drought. The water companies tried to charge enormous prices for basic water supplies. They said it was necessary to maintain the infrastructure. The aliens listened despite themselves. Something about Hannah's tone made them pay attention. My grandmother organized the neighborhood. They dug a well together, shared the work and the cost. When the water company found out, they threatened legal action. They said the neighborhood was disrupting the established system. What happened? Ethos asked quietly. My grandmother smiled at them and said, the established system wasn't working for us, so we made a better one. The water company could have competed by lowering their prices and improving their service. Instead, they kept making threats until everyone ignored them. And then, the company went out of business. The neighborhood kept the well. Everyone had plenty of water at a fair price. Hannah picked up her tea again. The established system ended, but life went on. Actually, it got better. Morth's tentacles had gone very still. You're saying we should just accept the destruction of our authority? I'm saying you should consider whether your authority is worth preserving if it only exists to make other people miserable. The room fell silent again. For the first time. In the conversation, the three Veltars seemed to be actually thinking rather than just reacting. What you propose would create chaos, Crick said, but his voice lacked conviction. What we have now is chaos, Hannah replied. 47 species. Working only to pay tribute to 3. Half the galaxy's productive capacity going to support entities that produce nothing themselves. That's not order, that's waste. But without our oversight ... Species would trade freely based on mutual benefit. They'd form partnerships, solve problems together, create new technologies and art and ideas. The things intelligent beings do when they're not being threatened. Ethos had begun shifting colors again, but slowly this time. Thoughtful blues and greens instead of angry. Reds, and what would become of us? She asked. You'd become whatever you chose to become. You clearly have advanced technology and organizational skills. You could be traders, explorers, researchers, teachers. You could contribute to galactic civilization instead of just controlling it. We have never been anything but rulers, Morth said quietly. Then maybe it's time to learn, Hannah said. Everyone should try new things. She stood up and walked to the window. Outside, a small ship was docking, one of the new vessels from the Kethmari Collective. Its crew would normally be working to earn tribute payments. Instead, they were delivering the first free trade goods to reach Earth in 800 years. The galaxy is changing whether you participate or not, she said without turning around. 17 species stopped tribute payments yesterday. More will follow today. You can fight it and lose everything, or you can join it and discover what you might become. When she turned back to the table, the 3 Veltar were staring at her with expressions she couldn't quite read. We need time to consider this, Crick said finally. Of course. Take all the time you need. How much time do we have before... Before what? Before you force us to comply. Hannah smiled, that same warm, patient smile that had started everything. We're not going to force you to do anything. That would make us just like you used to be. When you're ready to join the conversation, we'll be here. The 3 Veltar left the meeting in silence. They walked through the station's corridors like beings in a dream, their usual commanding presence reduced to confused uncertainty. Other species representatives watched them pass with expressions, ranging from curiosity to barely hidden satisfaction. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Veltar looked like what they truly were. 3 individuals who had built their entire identity around being feared dumped back on their ship. The emergency session that followed was unlike any meeting in Triumvirate history. She offered us tea, Ethos said, her crystal form flickering between colors too rapidly to follow. She offered to bring us different furniture. She asked if we were comfortable. No one has ever asked if we were comfortable, Morth whispered. His tentacles lay limp around him like deflated balloons. Crix paced the chamber, his blade arms clicking erratically. This is all wrong. Negotiations don't work this way. There should be threats, demonstrations of power, fear, not tea, and comfortable chairs. Maybe, Ithos said carefully, that's the problem. The other 2 stared at her. Maybe, she continued, we never learned how to actually negotiate because we never needed to. On the monitoring station, Captain Minho was recording everything. The Veltar ship's communications were in chaos. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy showing the rapid collapse of the tribute system. 23 species have now stopped payments, his communications officer reported. The Veltar fleet is receiving distress calls from their tax collection stations, but they're not responding. Why not? Unknown, sir. But intercepted communications suggest the Triumvirate has ordered all ships to stand down pending new instructions. In her office, Jiwan was analyzing the psychological profiles of the three Veltar leaders. What she found explained a lot about their current breakdown. "They're not evil," she told Minister Deho over secure video. "They're just dominated." "How so?" "Think about it. They've spent 3,000 years in a system where they never had to consider other perspectives. Never had to compromise. Never had to actually solve problems, just suppress them. They're emotionally and intellectually stunted. Like children who never learn to share, exactly. Very powerful, very dangerous children, but children nonetheless." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, something remarkable was happening. Species that had been isolated from each other for centuries were making contact. Trade routes that had been monopolized by the Veltar were opening to direct commerce. Ideas and technologies were flowing freely for the first time in millennia. The Kethmari had developed amazing agricultural techniques during their 800 years of tribute labor. The Moran Collective had created art forms of breathtaking beauty. The Roxinger clans had mastered asteroid mining. The group consciousness species had insights into mathematics that could revolutionize space travel. All of this had been hidden, suppressed, or exploited by the Veltar system. Now it was emerging like flowers after a long winter. Hannah spent her afternoon reading reports from across human space. Every hour brought news of new partnerships, trade agreements, and cultural exchanges. It was like watching civilization wake up from a 3,000-year sleep. "The Oran Republic wants to establish a joint research station," Jinho told her as he delivered the latest batch of messages. "The Rocksingers are offering to help us mine the asteroid belt. And the Kethmari want to teach us some kind of advanced agriculture." "What about the Veltar?" Hannah asked. "No word. Their ship is still here, but they haven't sent any communications since the meeting." That evening, Hannah received an unexpected visitor. Morth arrived alone, without the usual diplomatic fanfare. He looked smaller somehow, his tentacles moving slowly and staying close to his body. "I wanted to ask you something," he said without preamble. "Of course. Would you like to sit down?" Yes, thank you." They sat in the small meeting room where the morning's negotiations had taken place. Hannah poured tea for both of them, though she wasn't sure if Morth could actually drink. How did you know?" he asked. "Know what?" That our power was an illusion?" Morth's tentacles shrank even closer to his body. "Yes." Hannah considered the question while she sipped her tea. "I didn't know, exactly. But I could see that you were working very hard to frighten me. People who are truly confident don't need to work that hard. We've been frightening people for so long, we forgot that we were working at it." "Fear is exhausting," Hannah agreed. "For everyone involved, what happens to us now?" Morth asked. "The other species hate us. Our authority is gone. Our fleets are refusing orders. Everything we built is collapsing." "Is that necessarily bad? It's everything we are." "No," Hannah said gently. "It's everything you were. You can become something different." "But we don't know how. We've never been anything else." Hannah set down her cup and looked at the alien across from her. Morth was clearly miserable, his tentacles drooping with what could only be described as depression. "Can I tell you something my grandmother taught me?" she asked. Morth nodded. "She said that the hardest part of changing your life isn't deciding what you want to become. It's letting go of what you used to be. But if we let go of being the triumvirate, what's left? 3 individuals with names and personalities and interests. When did you last think about what Morth wanted instead of what the Veltar regent needed to do?" Morth was quiet for a long time. His tentacles had stopped moving entirely. I don't remember," he said finally. "Then maybe that's a good place to start." Back on the Veltar ship, Crix and Ethos were having their own crisis. Reports continued to stream in showing the complete breakdown of their control systems. But instead of anger, they were beginning to feel something neither had experienced in millennia, uncertainty about their own purpose. "What if she's right?" Ethos said suddenly. "About what?" "About everything. What if the galaxy would be better without us?" Crix's blade arms hung motionless. "Then we've wasted 3,000 years. Or maybe we were just preparing for something different. The next morning brought more dramatic news. The 47 species that had been paying tribute had formally established something called the Free Trade Collective. They were offering membership to any species interested in open, voluntary commerce. The Veltar Triumvirate had been conspicuously not invited, but Hana had sent them a personal message. The Free Trade Collective is open to all species who wish to participate as equals. If you're interested in joining, we'd be happy to discuss the possibilities. For the first time in recorded history, the Veltar Triumvirate, former rulers of the galaxy, found themselves in the position of asking permission to join something, instead of demanding submission to their will. It was terrifying. It was humiliating. It was completely unfamiliar. It was also, they were beginning to realize, an opportunity to discover who they might become when they stopped trying to control everyone else. The age of fear was ending. The age of cooperation was about to begin, and 3 former galactic tyrants were about to learn what it meant to be ordinary people in an extraordinary galaxy. 3 weeks after the first meeting, the galaxy had become a completely different place. Trade routes that had been controlled by the Veltar for millennia were now bustling with free commerce. Species that had never been allowed to communicate were sharing technologies, art, and ideas. The change was so rapid and dramatic that Earth's sociologists were struggling to document it all. It's like someone removed a dam, Dr. Li Neang told her research team. Thousands of years of suppressed development are flowing out all at once. The numbers were astonishing. Galactic trade volume had increased by 400% in 3 weeks. Scientific papers were being published at a rate not seen since the early days of space exploration. Art galleries on every world were showcasing works from species they had never heard of before, and the Veltar Triumvirate was watching it all happen from their ship, still parked near the neutral moon, still trying to understand what role they might play in this new galaxy. They had received Hannah's invitation to join the Free Trade Collective, but none of them knew how to respond. How do you ask to join something when you've spent 3,000 years demanding that others submit to you? Finally, Ethos made a decision that surprised her companions. I'm going to talk to the human, she announced. Which human? Crix asked. Hana, the one who changed everything. What will you say? I don't know. But I need to understand. How she did it, how she knew we were weak, Morth suggested quietly. Afraid, Ethos corrected. How she knew we were afraid. The next day, Ethos arrived at the human station alone. She had never traveled without the full ceremonial escort of the Triumvirate before. Walking through the corridors by herself felt strange and liberating at the same time. She found Hana in the station's observation deck, looking out at the busy traffic of ships. The human turned as she approached, offering that same warm smile that had started everything. Ethos, I'm so glad you came. How are you doing? The question caught Ethos off guard. When had anyone last asked how she was doing? I am ... confused, she admitted. That's understandable. A lot has changed very quickly, too quickly. I don't understand how you knew how you predicted that you'd let go of the tribute system, that we were capable of letting go. Hannah gestured to a pair of chairs near the window. May I ask you something? When did you last feel happy? Ethos's crystal form flickered through several colors before settling on an uncertain purple. Happy? Satisfied. Content. Pleased with your life. I don't understand the question. When you wake up in the morning, do you look forward to your day? When you accomplish something, do you feel proud? When you see something beautiful, does it bring you joy? Ethos was quiet for a long moment. Her form shifted through colors that had no names in human language. No, she said finally. I have not felt those things for a very long time. What do you feel? Duty, necessity, the weight of maintaining order. She paused. Fear that the order might collapse. And now that it has collapsed? I don't know. I expected to feel destroyed. Instead, I feel lighter. Hannah nodded. My grandmother used to say that the heaviest chains are the ones we put on ourselves. We convinced ourselves that the galaxy needed us to control it, Ethos said slowly. But perhaps what the galaxy needed was for us to stop controlling it. Outside the window, a group of ships from different species were docking together. Their crews were meeting in the station's central hub, sharing meals and stories. Laughter carried through the corridors, a sound that had been rare in the controlled galaxy of the Veltar era. What happens to us now? Ethos asked. What would you like to have happen? I had never considered that I had a choice. Everyone has choices. What would Ethos choose to do if she didn't have to be Veltar Prime? Ethos's form began shifting through colors more rapidly, but they were brighter now. More alive. I remember, before the triumvirate, I was interested in harmonics. Sound and vibration and the mathematics of music. I had theories about how different species might create music together, combining their unique abilities. That sounds fascinating. But it was not practical for a ruler. Music does not maintain order or collect tribute. Music brings joy, Hannah pointed out. Joy is pretty practical. The Free Trade Collective, would they accept someone who used to be their oppressor? Why don't you ask them? That afternoon, Ethos did something she had never done in 3,000 years. She sent a personal message, not from Veltar Prime to subordinate species, but from Ethos to beings she hoped might become friends. The message was simple. I have ideas about multi-species music collaboration. Would anyone be interested in discussing this? The response was overwhelming. Within hours, she had received messages from musicians, composers, and acoustic engineers across 47 star systems. They were curious, welcoming, and excited about the possibilities. None of them mentioned her past as a galactic tyrant. They were interested in her ideas about music. Back on the Veltar ship, Crix and Morth watched their companion's transformation. With amazement and growing hope. She looks different, Morth observed. Brighter, more present. She looks alive, Crix said. When did we stop looking alive? The answer was obvious. They had stopped looking alive when they had stopped living for themselves and started living only to maintain a system that made no one happy. What would you do? Morth asked. If you could choose anything? Crix was quiet for a long time. His blade arms, which had been weapons of intimidation for so long, moved slowly and thoughtfully. I was an engineer once, he said finally. Before the triumvirate, I designed starships. I was good at it. What kind of ships? Fast ones, beautiful ones. Ships that could take people anywhere they wanted to go. His blade arms clicked softly. The Free Trade Collective needs ships, not warships or intimidation vessels. Just good, reliable ships for people who want to explore and trade and visit each other. And you, Morth? Crix asked. What would you choose? Morth's tentacles moved in patterns they hadn't used for centuries, not the controlling gestures of a ruler, but the expressive movements of someone sharing ideas. I understand minds, he said. How they work, what they need, how they communicate. But I use that knowledge to create fear and submission. His tentacles drooped. I would like to use it to help instead. Help how? Therapy, counseling. There are so many species who have spent so long being afraid. They'll need help learning how to be free again. The three former rulers of the galaxy sat together in their empty ship, imagining futures where they contributed to civilization instead of controlling it. For the first time in millennia, they were thinking about what they could give instead of what they could take. 2 days later, each of them sent personal messages to the Free Trade Collective. Ytihas proposed a galactic music festival where species could share their artistic traditions. Crix offered to design a new class of trade vessels that would be faster and more efficient than anything currently available. Morth volunteered his services as a psychological counselor for species recovering from the trauma of the tribute system. All three requests were accepted. Not because the collective forgave them for their past, forgiveness would take time, but because the new galaxy was built on the principle that everyone deserved a chance to become better than they had been. The transformation was not complete. Trust would have to be earned through years of positive action. But for the first time in 3,000 years, the three most feared beings in the galaxy were looking forward to tomorrow. And it had all started with one human who forgot to be intimidated. 1 year later, the galaxy celebrated the first annual Freedom Day, a holiday marking the end of the tribute system and the beginning of the free trade era. The celebration was held simultaneously on 49 worlds with real-time communication. Linking them all together, Hannah stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, the headquarters of the Free Trade Collective. Through the massive windows, she could see ships from every corner of the galaxy. Not cargo vessels struggling to earn tribute payments, but explorers, traders, artists, and families visiting each other across the stars. The reports are incredible, Jinho told her, reading from a datapad. Galactic GDP has increased by 800% in the past year. Scientific discoveries are happening daily, and the cultural exchange programs have waiting lists decades long. What about crime rates? Hannah asked. Down 60%. Turns out that when people aren't desperate to make tribute payments, they're less likely to turn to piracy or black market trading. Through the window, Hannah could see a familiar crystalline form approaching the station. Ithos had become one of the most celebrated musicians in the galaxy. Her compositions combining human melodies, Kethmari rhythms, and rock singer harmonics had created entirely new forms of art. The Galactic Symphony performs tonight, Jinho said, following her gaze. First time all 49 species will be represented in a single musical piece. That's beautiful, Hannah said. What about Crix and Morth? Crix is launching the first of his new exploration vessels next month. The Moran Collective commissioned it for their deep space research program. And RTH ... Yes? He's opened the therapy clinics on 15 different worlds. Apparently, he's very good at helping people overcome trauma and fear. Who would have thought? Hannah smiled. Sometimes the best healers are the ones who understand pain from both sides. Her communication device chimed with an incoming message. The sender made her laugh. It was from Regent Morth, though he had dropped the title months ago. Now he was just Dr. Morth, licensed therapist and counselor. Dear Hannah, the message read, I hope this finds you well. I wanted to update you on my work with the Zephyr species. They had been under Veltar rule for 1,200 years and were having difficulty adjusting to freedom. I am pleased to report that they have now established their first democratically elected government and opened 3 universities. They asked me to thank you for showing them that bullies are just scared people who need help. I thought you would appreciate the irony. Your approach continues to inspire my work every day. Also, I still cannot manage your smiling technique as my species lacks appropriate facial muscles, but I have developed what my patients call the warm tentacle wiggle. It seems to work almost as well. With gratitude, Morth. The message included a small video file. When Hannah played it, she saw Morth working with a group of young aliens who had never known life without fear. His tentacles moved in gentle, encouraging patterns as he helped them practice making their own decisions. The transformation from galactic tyrant to beloved therapist was so complete, it was hard to believe these were the same beings. Incoming ship requesting permission to dock, the station's communication system announced. This is Captain Yoon Minho of the Earth vessel Resilience, returning from the Outer Rim survey mission. Hannah hurried to the docking bay to greet her old friend. Minho's ship had spent 6 months exploring regions of space that had been forbidden under Veltar rule. What they had found there was extraordinary. Hannah, Minho called as he emerged from his ship. You need to see this data. We found 17 species out there that no one knew existed. They've been hiding for centuries, too afraid to make contact, because they thought the galaxy was controlled by the Veltar. What are they like? Amazing. There's a species that lives in the vacuum of space itself. They feed on solar radiation and communicate through gravity waves. Another that has developed mathematics so advanced they can predict the formation of new star systems. And there's one that appears to be made entirely of living light. Are they interested in joining the collective? They're fascinated by the whole concept. Most of them thought galactic civilization was impossible because they assumed it would always be based on fear and control. When we explained that it was now based on voluntary cooperation, they want to be part of it. They're sending ambassadors next month. As the day continued, more reports came in from across the galaxy. The Kethmari had developed new crops that could grow in previously barren environments. The rock singers had discovered methods for converting asteroids into orbital habitats. The group consciousness species had solved several fundamental problems in faster-than-light communication. All of this progress had been suppressed or exploited under the old system. Now it was flowering freely, benefiting everyone. That evening, Hannah attended the Galactic Symphony performance. The massive auditorium was filled with beings from 49 different species, all sitting together in what would have been unthinkable just a year before. Humans sat next to Kethmari, who chatted with rock singers, who shared jokes with the group consciousness species. When Ethos took the stage, her crystal form blazed with excited colors. The symphony she had composed told the story of the past year, from the dark, oppressive tones representing the tribute system, through the moment of change, marked by a simple, clear melody that sounded remarkably like someone humming while drinking tea, to the explosive joy of liberation and cooperation. Performance was so moving that several species began crying, or whatever their equivalent was. When it ended, the applause lasted for 20 minutes and was broadcast across all 49 worlds. After the concert, Hannah found herself in a small reception room with an unexpected gathering. Ethos, Crix, and Morth were there, along with representatives from dozens of species. They were not formal diplomatic meetings, just friends sharing food and conversation. "I still cannot believe this is real," said Veltar from the Moran Collective. "A year ago, half our population was working only to pay tribute. Now we have the most advanced agricultural system in the galaxy. The most surprising part," added Korath from the Rock Singers, "is how much more productive we are when we're working for ourselves instead of for tribute payments." "It turns out," Mirth said thoughtfully, "that fear is extremely inefficient. When people are afraid, they spend most of their energy on survival instead of creation." Hannah looked around the room at faces that had been enemies a year ago and were now friends. The transformation was so complete it seemed like a dream. "There's something I've been wondering," she said to the 3 former Veltar rulers. "Do you miss it? Being in charge of everything?" The 3 aliens exchanged glances. The same kind of look they had shared in their intimidation chamber, but warmer now. "More connected. I thought I would," Crix admitted. "But I was never actually in charge of anything important. I was just in charge of keeping people afraid. And fear," Ethos added, "is a very small thing to rule over. Now I help people heal from fear," Morth said. "I think that's more important than causing it." As the evening wound down, Hannah stepped outside onto one of the station's observation platforms. The view of space was spectacular ships from 49 species moving freely between the stars, carrying trade goods, art, ideas, and friendship. To every corner of the galaxy. Her communication device chimed once more. This message was from Earth, from her grandmother in Seoul. "Dear granddaughter," it read, "I saw the concert broadcast tonight. Beautiful music. Even more beautiful that beings who used to be enemies are now making music together. I'm proud of you for remembering what I taught you about bullies. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is refuse to be afraid of them. It gives them permission to stop being afraid too. Love, grandmother. P.S. I'm sending tea, the good kind. Share it with your new friends." Hannah smiled, the same warm, unshakable smile that had changed the galaxy. In the distance, she could see Ethos's ship preparing for departure. Tomorrow, the former Veltar Prime would travel to a new world to help establish their first interspecies orchestra. Crix was already gone, having left to oversee the construction of his new exploration vessels. His designs were so elegant and efficient that every species in the collective had placed orders, and Morth was returning to his therapy clinics, where he would continue helping people learn to live without fear. The galaxy was free. Not because anyone had been conquered or destroyed, but because 3 bullies had finally learned to stop bullying in 47. Oppressed species had learned to stop being oppressed. It had all started with one simple truth that humans had always known but had forgotten to mention. Bullies are just people who have forgotten how to be anything else. Sometimes all they need is someone to show them that there are better ways to live, and sometimes that someone just needs to smile and offer them tea. The age of fear was over. The age of friendship had begun, and in the small apartment in Seoul, an elderly woman smiled as she packaged the good tea for shipping to her granddaughter and her granddaughter's new friends among the stars.